There's one final topic that I want us to discuss because actually the gentlemen here at one time, they have all been in ODM. Two of them still remain in ODM. When I left ODM in 2018 or 19?
2018. I left immediately after.
Ideologically, you left.
Ideologically, he's an ODM.
But you transitioned.
No, I left.
Still,
I left. Abandoned the
biggest party around.
we have his seat is still preserved for him.
I don't know what you mean when you say the biggest party. What are you using to measure?
If you look locally,
yeah,
and you look at the number of votes that are voted for, whether it's in Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, or whatever, the votes that ODM gets, even when we lose the election, are always up there.
So you
shows the popularity.
In 2022, you got more votes than UDA.
No, that's not the point I'm saying. I'm saying regionally. In other words, when I'm saying it's a big party within the region.
Which region?
You compare.
It's an old party, not
Whereas
biggest
UDA
party.
was a conglomeration of Ford Kenya. It was a conglomeration of...
UDA is a party on its own.
Yes.
I'm talking about the alliance, the KK alliance. I'm talking about that alliance. That if you look at the matrix and the numbers, comparing with either side that was for example, if Weta had crossed and voted with ODM, presumably, if you take his numbers, then that would have shown. In fact, I personally believe that we lost the presidency because we lost Wetangula.
Okay.
I believe that.
All right. So the second topic. So they are now on recess. They have done a few things during this period they have been at Parliament. Most remarkably, the passage of the Affordable Housing Bill 2024, which is now an act. They also considered, I think, through the Delegated Legislation Committee, the regulations to the health laws. Owen, what's your comment about the work you've been able to achieve, but also the continuing question of how well you're able to listen to the people in making decisions in the House?
Well, thank you. I think this session that ended was one of the busiest in terms of the work that came to Parliament, the Affordable Housing Bill, the health laws, the amendment to the National Government Coordination Act, and DORA, the Division of Revenue Bill, you know, and many laws that we passed, including the anchor to the budget, you know, the statement, the fiscal policy that we passed. All these tell you that we did quite some tremendous job within this. And I want to thank members of Parliament that participated fully to ensure that we have all these laws in place. Parliament, in its own way, is configured such a way that before we pass any laws, we must go back to the people, do public participation, and after public participation, then we come back to Parliament, table the reports, and pass the laws. Of importance is that Parliament listens, and members of Parliament listen to the people. And, you know, in a democracy, we can never have unanimous voices about certain things. There'll be things that will be opposed and things that will be supported. And that's the essence of the beauty of democracy in this country. That, and it is in the maxim that the majority will have their way and the minority will have their say. And that is pure democracy. So it is not always that when you hear the loudest voices, that it's not always the most. You know, some of these opposition people, like in this bench here, my friend here, Senator Onyonga, might have the loudest voice, but he's not the majority. You know, he just has a loud voice.
No, you see,
but he is not.
Has passions on me.
No. I'm just trying to explain.
All people in government, Sammy, once they take power, that's how they behave.
I'm not trying to say
by me being in the opposition and criticizing them that I have a loud mouth.
No, I'm saying
I'm doing my job. I'm telling it the way it is.
Okay. So I want to say that, you see, sometimes you might have people who might speak.
So out of curiosity, because you said that they're in the opposition, you're in government.
Yes.
You listen to the people, but the majority have their way.
Yes.
Which majority do you use? Is it the government or the people?
You see, Sam, why are we called a majority? We are a majority because we are first, in terms of numbers in Parliament, we represent a substantial number of Kenyans you know, that is more than the other side. Already, if you look at, if you want to know when I talk about majority and when Parliament, you know, the concept of majority within Parliament is not necessarily just the number of MPs. You also look at when you have this number of MPs that are in majority, do they also have equal number of people as majority on their side? And that is true. That is true in the sense that if you look...
And therefore,
yes.
Because the role of Parliament is not to represent government in the House, is it?
No. And actually, I wanted to tell you, we are not government when we're in Parliament. We are majority. We belong to the majority party. And no, the presidential system that we have, unlike the former parliamentary system where you had opposition and government, today, every member of Parliament is part of the legislature, which is the third arm of government.
How well have you played that role as representatives of the people,
yes,
not as the party that is in government? And I'm asking this in relation to the bills that you've been able to consider, not just in this session of 6 weeks. That
I want to say this.
Yeah.
One of the bills that we considered was the DORA, the Division of Revenue bill, okay, and it passed. And this was, the majority had their way. But DORA gave money to counties, you know, enough money to counties. That is one.
Do you want to talk to me about affordable housing?
Two,
no?
I want to come, Senate, I don't know whether the Senate has passed the bill, but we will give him his chance to give. On the affordable housing, the affordable housing is something that must be looked at from the different perspective from what the naysayers are putting. One, affordable housing is about jobs, job creations. Every Kenyan, if you go out there, if you go to my constituency, they say, I want a job. How do we create a job for you? Here, we are building these houses. The carpenters here will be able to make doors. The masons will come and have a job. The plumbers will come and have a job. The architects will have a job. The project managers will have a job. We have created many jobs. Those jobs do not belong to Kenya Kwanza. Those jobs belong to the people. And that is what affordable housing is about. Secondly, do Kenyans require housing? Do we have a deficit for housing in this country? Decent, nice houses? Yes. And that is a fundamental thing. Even Azimio had that in their manifesto. They acknowledge that we have a problem of housing in this country, and they want to cure that.
Okay.
Okay. And it is a national agenda. Nairobi requires houses. Mombasa, Kenyans require more housing. And not just housing to rent, but also housing to own. Okay. That is a Kenyan agenda. It is an agenda of the majority of Kenyans. So when people say that, you see, this affordable housing people, we only have issues about how to implement it.
All right.
Okay? But a majority of the Kenyans are in agreement.
To your colleagues.
Yes.
Caleb,
yes.
Tell me, how then do you do checks and balances on the other organs of government?
You know, there is a social constructivist by the name Alexander Wendt, who said that anarchy is what the states make of it. Anarchy is socially constructed. We can decide to have a very cohesive, democratic nation by ourselves, or we can decide to make it anarchical society, where there's just chaos, people don't understand, institutions don't work. We say we have parliament, but it's not working. We say we have executive, but it's not working, judiciary, but it's not working. So it is how the states make of it. And we can decide as a nation whether to make this country be anarchical or to be order. And there's some democratic values. And the way democracy was designed, I don't think is the way we do practice here, because if we are to have separation of powers, it means that each of these three arms are supposed to check each other. Now, I am not very sure, and I want to honor it to Kenyans, I am not very sure where, as a parliament, we've been able to, you know, carry this mandate and show Kenyans that we've been able to check the executive very well without interference. Because what happens is that members of parliament can have a different view in a certain area, bills or motions, but they are called by the executive and given an order to do this. We saw happened in Naivasha when we were passing the housing bill. they are called and they are told, this is where you are supposed. I mean, these members had a different view, and they are telling us, as much as we are in Kenya Kwanza, we don't think this is good for our... That is how democracy was meant, so that whatever the executive brings, if it is not good for the people, the parliament is supposed to curb and say, this is not going to pass. Judiciary is also going to act its role of balancing, checks and balancing. So I think that's where we failed as a nation. And for us, from the what we call minority side, we may say that we have said our part, whether it is in parliament, in radio stations, in forums that we attend. But of course, what happens to parliament is that the votes carry the day, and the votes the side of the accusation.
That's a significant number of your members in the minority side do not even attend sittings.
Attending sitting, this thing of not attending sitting, a lot of parliament work happens in committees.
Yeah,
a lot of it.
But decisions are made at the plenary.
Yes, but the decisions, when they are very critical, the committees will stop, and the members will be called to plenary to vote. And those members, they come. Maybe if it is an individual member, maybe he has either traveled or is representing the parliament elsewhere or is in the constituency. But whenever, that's why we have chief whip from both sides, the minority whip and the majority whip, so that they can whip their members.
Have you heard times that have crucial votes being taken in the House? Have you heard of situations where a majority, let me not say majority, but a significant number of the minority side are not in the House?
I'm not a chief whip of either side, so I cannot know.
You're not, but I'm asking you if you've heard.
I am not involved to hear. I am there to attend and articulate my issues, not to start hearing rumor mongering. I'm not in that.
It is not a rumor.
Yeah, but that's not my... I go to parliament to do my duty. It is the duty of the whip. If this one you can ask Junet, whether when he comes here, whether he has members who never attended the parliament. That's not my duty.
Okay, Senator, talk to me about, because you've been in parliament for quite a bit of time now, I think since 2007.
Yes.
And because I've had this conversation, I've had members of parliament say that parliament has been captured. And I don't know whether that's true or not, but what do we do?
Sammy, let me first say this. I am very, very, very frustrated at the National Assembly. And the reason for that is that we, as a country, are suffering from, number one, where we brought in very young politicians, many of them who have won elections for the first time. And they have never had any experience, which, you know, young people don't care about experience, and they're not really interested in listening to what this thing called experience is about. So as a result, the prioritization on what is critical and important to them is sometimes irrelevant. And yet, in reality, Sammy, for the leadership of this country, particularly the young generation of this country, what I keep telling them is that for those who much has been given, much is expected. If you look at the history of the younger politicians who were there in the 70s, the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and you look at the James Orengos, you can go to Tom Mboya, you can look at the very vibrant young politicians. You could actually see their speeches. It is very rare they would insult somebody on a platform. It's very rare they would attack somebody, physically or otherwise. They were very cautious that this nation had to be kept together as a unit. And as a result, the disagreements that we have with the KK government and the performance of the members of parliament in the House and both the Senate is that it has left a lot to be desired. I can actually tell you proudly that in the Senate, we have done much more than what the National Assembly is trying to do or what they have been doing. And the reason for that is very simple. Once the KK government knew that they had a majority, what has happened is that then the ability of the alliance to bring in laws which follow the law, which follow our constitution, has been a problem. And that is why we keep telling our brother, Mr. Baya here, Mr. Baya, we have never disagreed that houses should be built. Like you said, what we have disagreed about is how to do it. And what we are telling you is, because, for example, the ownership of land is a matter that is actually devolved to the county governments. We wanted the county governments to be involved. Number two, we were also saying you can't build a poor person a house, which as a government, you've taken public land and then you brought this voters' money in terms of the levy, then you use that money to build him a house, and then you build the houses which are more expensive than the ones which Ederman is doing in Athi River. There's something wrong with that matrix. Number two, we don't know why certain issues about these houses which are being built have not been legislated. The legal framework, the socioeconomic impact. For example, I will give the KK Alliance fantastic support, particularly in the areas, the slum areas in Nairobi, for example. The houses which the president is doing is a very good idea in Kibera. But you see, the question we are having is this: why go and demolish people from where they are staying, kick them out, and then now come and tell them, oh, I'll pay rent for you guys as you've been kicked out, so that you wait for the houses to be given to you. Look at what happened in Mombasa, the Buxton. That project was supposed to be done by Joho. That project was picked up by Nasir. Look at where we are. The people whose houses were being built, we know ourselves as Kenyans. We know what we do, Sami. It is the rich people who want to take over those houses so that they can rent them to the poor people. Which structure, data have you picked? What I'm worried about, Honorable Baya, do we have a list of all these people we are kicking out of the slummy areas and the areas that nobody wants to live in as they look now, but which, if the houses are built, given their proximity and their areas, then we, the rich, and we, the political class, are going to take over those houses. Look at the jobs issue. You said a point that you see what your government has done. You have come in with DORA. I can tell you today, unless you're going to give, the government is going to allow for us to negotiate 435 to 450 billion shillings to the county governments, DORA is going to fail. I can tell you why. Because we have realized, last year the government never added any money, but your government has collected 1 trillion shillings in revenue. So we are saying, give us what the county needs to get as you deal with the rest of the money. The other issue that I wanted to tell you, Honorable Baya,
yes,
my brother, you will never give people jobs where they build houses and where they get those jobs and become wealthy and get out of poverty. The best way to do it is fix agriculture, take most of the poor people who are anyway agricultural based, provide inputs. Now you are selling mud to people, you are selling mchanga to people and saying it's fertilizer, and you are saying we cannot tell your government that's what is happening. If the president is not able to arrest the people who were supplying this fake fertilizer and everything, Kenyans are going to say it is dealer boys who are selling the fertilizer. It is dealer boys who negotiated the 2,500. You knew that traders were having fertilizer at 4,200. How can a dealer who has got fertilizer at 4,000 shillings wait in his shop until you bring that one of 2,500? So you've taken a fantastic project whereby you were providing subsidies, where we were changing your food security, and you made it into a deal. What your government has done is created dealers and not leaders.
I want to say this in response to what I said. You see, when something as good as the fertilizer subsidy comes in and people are happy about what is happening, of course, crooks will come in. And that is something that must be fought. These are criminals. They should not be seen. The whole country. They should not be seen to be government mandarins. These are criminals. And if they're criminals and they are defrauding people out of the fertilizer, then you know where they belong, in jail. And I will stand here in this TV station and say, any person given the power to investigate, to arrest, and to prosecute, they need to do their job. But that should not be seen as state-sanctioned. This is a matter that is criminal, and it must be dealt at that level, Sam. So I want to assure my brother here, and also happy that he has acknowledged that the fertilizer subsidy actually worked.
It's a good idea.
It's a good idea. This government is about good ideas.
Then you go, and
one of them is
implementation.
Is the fertilizer.
Idea, then they sell
good ideas.
Senator,
but crooks have come into the system, and these crooks must be dealt with by the law.
You said something that in such a good program, of course, crooks will come in.
Yes. That's anywhere in the world, you know.
So if it is this obvious that they'll come in, why don't we have protective measures to ensure they don't succeed?
So, Sammy, who do we blame?
What are farmers supposed to do?
As an opposition member, who do I blame?
You don't come in to blame government because crooks have come in. What is
the role of government?
What we need to do, please, you know, Kisi are known for Kisi Senator.
No, don't go there. You will not
that one withdraw.
They are not
don't go there.
good people.
Of tribal.
I'm giving you an opportunity.
Exactly.
Kikuyus are like
this.
But I want to say this, Sam, that this fertilizer subsidy program has been a success. It was a success.
It is not a success, Owen.
In the previous,
farmers are complaining. You've seen them in the news.
In the previous
year. They're showing you the fertilizer mixture of, I don't know what it is.
Those crooks must be dealt with.
Those are the images of the fertilizer you're talking about.
And I'm not disputing this.
Is that how success looks like?
I am not disputing those images. I'm saying that crooks have come in, those crooks must be dealt with. Just like you have criminals anywhere part of this country, there are criminals in this country, and they must be dealt with, and it should not be seen as a government program to bring in fertilizer like that. It is not a government. This government is interested in food production. Food production that has been done and succeeded.
I'm struggling with this.
Yes.
I asked you about parliament. You're telling me about government.
Yes.
I don't know whether you mean executive or what you're talking about.
I want to talk about Dora. I want to talk about Dora.
You don't want to talk about
step me into something that I want to speak about Dora. I want to challenge senators on Dora, that Parliament did its work. Fortunately, this time Dora is going into Senate. We would like to see senators' reaction to it. We want to see if they have amendments. We are happy to receive those amendments if they have amendments in Dora. And we are happy to look at them because eventually the National Assembly will pass Dora. So, senators...
I appreciate... If you do that, I'm with you.
Senators, we would like you to look at Dora with a tooth comb.
Thank you.
Look at it, and we want us to pass a law that will help counties. And that is what we stand for.
All right, Caleb, I want
if you want to... I want to finish.
Sorry.
Because I didn't had a chance to talk about it. I just wanted to say this. As much as we may want to appreciate the good projects from the government, we live in this country, we want the good for our country. We don't have any spare nation. The reason why we want to digest and tell them this is wrong is because of the manner in which they try to implement things. If you overtax a nation, and somebody says that taxing a nation to prosperity is like putting yourself in a bucket and trying to lift yourself by the handle. It's impossible. And if you see what their housing program was, they tell you it was borrowed from Singapore, it was borrowed from Malaysia. Those countries have a clear, they're called developmental states, the countries that were at par with Kenya. They have a clear way in which they progressed. They did not start by... In fact, the housing project has come at the tail end of their developmental state. They started by putting institutions, bureaucratic institutions in place. There's no corruption. Money flows to the right project without any corruption. That was the starting point. Before you think of multi-billion projects, first of all, you must sieve corruption out of it. The first step they started is by making sure that there is a bureaucratic process. There is completely no graft in the management of public resources. And they now shifted to the energy they have as a country. They invested in agricultural value addition, so that the things that were selling outside the country, they were of value to the nation. And the nations were getting foreign direct investments. There is a clear developmental structure that Singapore and Malaysia and those ASEAN countries followed. The flying geese model, you can talk of mercantilism, the trade surplus. What the energy, the potential of a country do you have against the globe? Singapore, it's located itself in a global flow of income, so that you don't have the minerals, you don't have the resources, but how can you attract the global flow of income? That's why they are. Now, before you go into housing, there was no noise about housing because they already developed. Now, the second you are going to is after reconstruction. That's why we have the Bretton Woods institutions. They were constructed, they came up after the World War II, so that after the ashes of and the war, Can we now reconstruct ourselves? That's why Kenya needed to be. After all the colonization, the bad leadership, can we reconstruct? That's why we have the Bretton Woods institutions trying to reconstruct a number of countries. Now, when you've started reconstructing, you go to social welfare. The housing project is a social welfare to cater for the vulnerable in the society. But first of all, reconstruct your nation. Put it in the development of path. Then go back and do the social welfare.
Fantastic.
Okay. All right. And that's a good point to leave it at, as the Parliament passed the law to say that it starts on the date of assent. The date of assent was 19th of March. I don't know what they have to say about when deduction should begin, but anyway, they have passed the law. The health sector is in crisis. Doctors are on strike. Clinic officers have indicated they'll also be downing their tools from the 4th of April. Parliament will be on recess between now. They come back on 9th of April. When they come back, they'll be in session between 9th of April and 2nd of May, after which they'll take the long recess between 3rd of May and the 3rd of June. So they'll be back in the House on the 4th of June. That's our time. Thank you so much, Senator Richard Onyonka, Mheshimiwa Owen Baya, and Mheshimiwa Caleb Amisi for making time for us of this conversation. Up next is Matter Social with Safin Acheng Oma. My name is Sam Gituku. Bye for now.